Greetings, friends. I started 2 minutes early today. Normally, Zen monks are right on time, not a minute ahead or a minute behind. So, hopefully, you are in a quiet place right now. You can take your sitting position, turn off your phone, throw it out the window. If you have an available shotgun, you may shoot your phone now if it's out on the lawn where you just threw it. Otherwise, you can throw it down a deep well. You can drop it down the mouth of a lion, or you can just turn it off. So we will do as we normally do. I'll do a little bit of Zazen, Zen meditation orientation, and we'll sit for 25 minutes, and then we'll have a short kinhin, which is a rest meditation. You can switch the cross of your legs or use the bathroom during that time. And then we'll do another 25 minutes sit. And then I'll just give like a short Dharma talk after that. So everybody, welcome to this Sunday sit. It's interesting. Some of you are in the States and some of you are in Europe. So for some of you, this is like your morning sit. And for those of us in Europe or elsewhere, this is our evening sit. And I found that those two types of sits are different. But whichever one you're doing, welcome. Take your seat, your meditation posture. Your legs are crossed. You can be kneeling as well, which is what we call seiza, with a cushion kind of under your butt or in between your legs. That's called seiza. You can be sitting on a chair. If you are sitting on a chair, sit on the edge of the chair with your feet flat on the ground and your back not against the back of the chair. For the rest of us, I'll assume that we're sitting cross-legged in some way. You can do Burmese, which is just regular crossed legs. Then you can do half lotus, which is you take one foot and you put it on the opposite thigh. Or you can do full lotus, which is both feet on the opposite thighs. So full lotus is the most austere meditation position. I've variously sat full lotus, half lotus, and Burmese. Do the position that you can do, take the position that you can take, that you will be able to hold for the full 25 minutes without pain or distress to your body. So you don't want the physical discomfort to be a distraction to the point where that's what your sit becomes about. A little bit of discomfort I found is okay. But there was a time when I was trying to do full lotus at the monastery and my ankles started to swell. My hips, I was having some issues with them. So I just decided, you know what, I'm becoming a victim of Zen practice. So take a position you can take that maybe challenges you just a little bit, but mostly you can hold that position for 25 minutes without moving, because that's what we're doing in our Sunday sit here. We're going to commit to just sitting still, breathing for 25 minutes. So once you've taken your posture, you can turn away from the computer. You definitely don't want to be looking at the computer when you're sitting. Your eyes are soft focus, which is to say you're using more of your peripheral than your beady-eyed focusing on your carpet or your wooden floor, your parquet, whatever it is. Soft focus, maybe about 2 or 3 feet ahead of you. In the Zen school, we keep our eyes open. There are other meditation schools where the eyes are closed. We keep the eyes open. I think there are different reasons for this, and you can discover them as you practice for yourself. I found it to be a good way to include what's going on in the world in my sitting, and to stay out of my head. When I close my eyes, it's just dream time. Okay. So the eyes are open, it's a soft gaze. Take a few deep breaths now into your diaphragm. People sometimes ask me, what is a deep breath? Um, Usually, we don't breathe deeply. We are kind of truncated in our exhale and our inhale. So you can maybe let out 12% more air in your exhale. And then you'll inhale maybe 10 to 12% more. You want your breathing to be natural, um, but complete. But don't think about it or worry about it too much, because then you start getting into that state where you have to yawn because your breathing is weird. Just take a deep inhale and a deep exhale, and let your diaphragm relax. Let your shoulders drop. You're probably carrying tension in your shoulders, in your neck, in your trapezius muscles. I bet you're carrying it in your jaw, your forehead, your eyebrows, around your eyes. Just let that tension melt out of your body. And when you bring it, I find when I bring a kind of focus into my sitting, my posture, the tension does drop away. So you want your spine to be straight. You want to be sitting up straight on your cushion, but not rigid, not stiff, right? It's like holding your bodily integrity or the integrity of the sitting posture. It's supple, but very upright. Heard it described like palm trees in the tropics, right? They undergo these huge storms. And so they're very strong so that they can stay upright, but they also have to be able to bend because they sway. So if you see these palm trees, I used to live in Los Angeles, and they go straight up, right? There's like straight up into the sky. But then when the wind comes, they go. Speaking of which, you can lean forward a little bit to find your posture. Lean back a little bit. Lean from side to side. And then find your center. Your hips are pivoted a little bit, so your knees are touching the floor, the ground. If your knees don't touch, don't have space between your knees and the floor, take a towel, a folded towel, and put it underneath your knees, or put some cushions underneath your knees, whatever you need to put under your knees in order to get a solid sitting position so that your knees are touching. Otherwise, you're wobbling and you're putting pressure, which is just a bad meditative posture, and you're putting pressure on your sciatica nerves as well. And that's going to be bad news for your sitting down the road. Sciatica nerves run, I think, from your like hip bones through your gluteus maximus, all the way down through your the undersides of your legs, like your hamstrings, and maybe even into your calves. And longtime sitters can get some problems with their with those muscles. So you want to make sure that your knees are touching the floor. That's a solid position. You're like Mount Sumu, my teacher used to say in Japan. You're breathing through your nostrils, so your lips are closed, tongue is gently touching the roof of the mouth. Breathing in through the nostrils and out through the nostrils. You can lay your hands flat in your lap. That's oftentimes what I do. Or you can take your right hand and your left hand, and the right hand takes the left thumb, and this is called a mudra. Looks like this, and you just put it at your hara or your diaphragm, your tanden, which is like in between your pubis and your belly button. So once you've taken your posture, that's the most important thing, really. Just hold that posture for the 25 minutes. And I'm going to talk a little bit after these two sits about Zazen. So um, in the meantime, we'll do it. And very, very basically, the practice is, as I learned it, um, you could say turn thinking into breathing. My teacher would probably smack me with his rolled up newspaper if you heard me say that. But generally speaking, when the thinking mind arises on the cushion, there can be the tendency to just get lost in thoughts, to believe them, to identify with and as them, to question them, to engage with them. It ain't the brain's fault. The brain is an organ that produces thoughts, like the pancreas produces insulin, okay, like the heart pumps blood, the brain thinks. And when we sit, our job, for the purpose of stopping suffering and getting a little bit clear, developing some equanimity and some insight and some distance from our problems. Our job when we sit is to give our full attention to the breath. So in Japan, the word for this is taitoku, means to apprehend with the body. That's what I mean a little bit about turning thinking into breathing. So you'll notice that you're thinking. It's going to happen again and again and again. It'll happen to me during the sit a lot. I'm thinking. And then the practice is to bring the attention back to the breath. You've noticed the thoughts, and you don't hang on to them and question yourself for having them and feel guilty, all of which is more thinking, right? It's like that letting the sediment settle to the bottom of a glass of dirty water, right? Just letting it settle back down. You don't stir up the mind with more thinking. And you don't repress the thoughts, because that is also more thinking. It's really fun. You can just watch them arise, like weather on the horizon, and watch them go. And then the practice is, what now? Well, we've had a moment of awakening. We awoke to our mind. And now the practice is to give that new self that's born from that moment of awakening, give it back to the sitting. We want to keep that activity of sitting strong and giving the attention to the breath. And I don't mean thinking. If we're giving our attention completely, then the thinking mind is gone. We're not thinking. We're doing it. We're apprehending with the body, that Japanese term, taitoku. So I deeply apologize for spitting a bunch of fog into your head right before a sit. Normally we would just sit. So the most important thing is, please just manifest your breathing for 2 sits, which I will keep the time with my trusty watch here that my teacher gave me. And I don't have my bell today, so we'll start the sit now, and then I'll let you know when it ends. Okay, friends, that ends our first sit. So we'll do 5 minutes of a rest meditation now. You can use the bathroom or get a drink of water or something, and we'll return in 5 minutes. You can change the cross of your legs now. So if you had your right foot on your left calf, for example, now your left calf goes on your right foot. You understand? Switch it up so you don't favor one side of your body too much when you're sitting. It's very easy for me to put my right foot up on my left thigh. Harder to get my left foot up on my right thigh. So now I'll sit with my left foot up on my right thigh. We'll sit for 25 minutes again, starting now. Okay. Come out of your cross-legged position now. All of these sits are between usually 21 and 25 minutes. They're not exactly 25 minutes. Sometimes at the monastery, you get a jikijitsu as the timekeeper, and you get a jikijitsu who's sort of working with the schedule from the head monk, the shika, and they want to get the schedule exactly right for the sits, and so they'll extend a sit maybe to 30 minutes or even 35, and you've been sitting since 4 in the morning, and now it's 9:30 in the evening, and they give you that 35-minute sit, and you just want to kill them. And sometimes per the schedule, keeping the sit will only be 20 minutes, and you'll think, I didn't feel like 25 minutes at all. I must be getting good at this. Okay, gang. So normally, I'm typing out my email here because normally after these sits, sometimes I'll take questions and try and answer them here, which is great. And it's not like I feel like I have answers, A's to Q's, question or answers for questions, but it's a good way to get my mind going on practice. And it's a good way to connect with this Sangha, this Patreon Sangha. And, there's not much to really teach in Zen. So oftentimes there are mandos or exchanges between different practitioners. And this is how people learn, is these exchanges. So the koans are really just all the koan collections are just written down exchanges between a student and a more experienced sitter. They call this the guest and the host in the Rinzai lineage. The guest brings the question and the host hosts the answer. So my point is, I find that I don't have enough time really to get into a lot of the questions that are asked at the end of these sits. And so I'm going to put my email here, and I want you to send me your questions, because I just want to talk briefly now a little bit about sitting. Usually I talk about sitting and I'm sitting here kind of looking at the questions, and I feel like I can't fully do both. So please, it's probably a bad idea to put my email into the internet here, but it is. So send me your questions, and I can't promise I'll answer them, but I really look forward to answering them. Also know if your question is inspiring, I may make a video on it. So I just don't mention people's names usually, just because some people really don't like to have their name mentioned on the internet, but I might try and make a video inspired by some of your questions. So that's also my motivation for asking you to send me any questions or thoughts you have about Zen practice. Okay. I just wanted to share a few things with you that occurred to me today, which I wrote sort of some notes down here. And as always, my teacher always said, don't think out your Dharma talks. Just let them come spontaneously. The end result of which was a lot of really scattered, random, like zero effort, bad Dharma talks that monks gave in our Sangha. But I understood the essence of what he was saying, which is let it come up in the moment. So I had some ideas today. I'm going to try and get them across to you here. One thing that occurred to me just when I was sitting just now, so I'm sitting, and you're sitting with me, and we're sitting together, and generally speaking, my practice is just sitting, and that means something. Usually, it means settling into, like, more and more, just settling down, settling in, settling down. And I noticed of just today, just fleetingly, that it seemed like I was putting some effort into trying to be positive. So trying to have a positive experience on the cushion, and some awareness caught that, and it was like, oh, I'm not sitting with what's happening. Actually, I was a little bit, it's hot out, really hot. And when I get really hot, it's weird. I get like not quite depressed, but a bit melancholic somehow. A bit, I feel like a bit claustrophobic. Um, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just Sunday. I tend to get maybe a bit more introspective. But there was a part of me that wanted to be chill. Okay, I'm sitting with people. I used to be a monk. I got to lead the sit. I gotta, manifest. God, that is like the monk's disease. It's like that you have to be a monk, whatever the monk is. Like everybody's got to be Thich Nhat Hanh, right? Like the perfect example of practice. And I think there was a little bit of that in my head. And fortunately, this awareness noticed it, or it fell into the field of awareness, and it was like, oh, that's interesting. And then kind of this melancholy arose, which I didn't want to feel, which is interesting. Didn't want to feel this, but the practice is to sit with it, right? I mean, the practice is to sit in the moment. And sometimes, like, I find myself fighting the moment, fighting what's actually happening in the moment. So it's very weird. Like, I was exposed to some neurologists recently who also meditate. They were explaining that and there's data, and I'm sure there are all sorts of brain scans and whatnot to back up the data. But they were saying that the mind really has the tendency to like fast forward and rewind, fast forward and rewind, fast forward and rewind, jumping into the future, prognosticating, projecting, and slinking back into and getting stuck in the ball and chain of the past, like going back and just jumping forward, just jumping forward, just jumping forward, just to the next moment, just around the corner, right? Like maybe it has to do with our evolutionary makeup. We never knew what was around the next corner, and so we better be ready for it. But the end result of this is that we're not truly in the moment a lot of the time, or at least I'm not. So, sitting is not doing anything, right? It's not doing anything. But how do we not do anything, right? Like how do we not do anything? What did Dogen say? Dogen said that you think not thinking. You just sit and do nothing. You're not adding anything to the experience. It's sort of, like I said earlier, for me, it's the experience of just sinking into awareness of what's going on right in the moment. So for today, for me, it was, wow, my bald head, flushed head is sweating. I'm hot. And there's this melancholy. And then when that melancholy comes up, somehow when it comes up and expresses itself, then maybe it just sort of dissolves a little bit. I've noticed that for myself. Some people find that noticing what's going on inside them amplifies what's going on inside them. My experience with those people are they're headed for probably needing psychological help of some kind or psychiatric help of some kind. Like if you can't settle down into your sit, if there's so much going on that that you're terrified of what's happening inside you. In my experience, it's usually, okay, somebody's having some psychological difficulties. But usually, in my experience, sitting, stuff comes up. It's a gift when it comes up, like today when that melancholy came up, because then it can kind of dissolve, right? Maybe it just needs to be heard and seen, like a little crying baby. It needs some attention, and then it dissolves, right? I've noticed that also with some physical issues with sitting. Like I pretzel my body this is at the monastery mostly, pretzel my body into a position and it's painful, but I just sit with the pain and eventually it dissolves away. Just sit with it, in it, and it will dissolve away. Just sitting. That's how we were doing today. Let's look at my notes here before I part ways with you. Okay. Okay, here's really what I wanted to get at. I hope I can do this. I hope I can do this. Um, okay. It's that doing nothing thing. So as I was exposed to these neurologists recently who are also mindfulness teachers, they were talking about like different mindfulness techniques, right? They were talking in, I think it was within the Theravadan tradition, and they were saying, okay, they're telling me, look, you've got to you focus on some part of your breath. So you focus on the nostrils, or you focus on it in your diaphragm. You put your attention into one area. And they're talking about the 4 ways that the Buddha talks about, and it's one of the sutras, I don't know which, about how to be mindful. And it really got me thinking about Zen practice and what Zazen is, and why I think it works for me, and why I think it's special. So there is in Zen practice this, as I mentioned earlier, this spirit of Tai Toku, which is apprehending or doing with the whole body, like from the toenails to the fingerprints to the eyeballs to the whole being of the sitter. And oftentimes that's why the Zen texts, the classic texts, the koan texts, are seemingly elusive and strange. I mean, I don't think that in that famous classic text by Dogen, where he taught, I forget what it's called, Zazen. There's a famous text by Dogen on Zazen, and there's a famous text by Hakuin on Zazen. So you got both halves of the Japanese Zen tradition, Rinzai and Soto. The main teachers have, the most famous teachers have texts on Zazen. To the best of my knowledge in this moment, I don't think either of them tells you how to do Zazen, right? Instead, it's something it's DIY, really. You learn it and do it yourself, in my experience. And we can have the tendency to kind of like half-ass it, like to sort of find a technique, whether it's mindfulness or breath counting or mantra chanting or chewing on our koan, like the dog chewing on a rawhide toy or something. Like we can have our little techniques. And one of the reasons that I think that a lot of the great Zen teachers were so cagey about actually describing what to do during Zazen is because we can get attached to these techniques and then we don't do the sitting completely. So here's what I was taught. And then I wrote it down today because it came to me. Okay, here's what it is. So you're doing nothing in sitting. But that eluded me. That baffled me for a long, long time, because you can't do nothing. You can't do nothing. Anything you do is something, right? Now we all have a sense that we're always busy and we're always engaged in something, and we're all kind of exhausted and we're all kind of distracted, and we know what it means to do nothing. It means to drop the mind. It means to drop busyness. It means to drop the activity. But how do we do that? It's a weird sort of paradox. Well, here's what I was taught, and I never heard this anywhere else. You can't do nothing, so you have to do something completely. And when you do something completely, then nothing sort of manifests. Your thinking mind goes into nothing. It dissolves into nothing. We know how that is. Like when you're really caught up in something, they call it samadhi in the not just the Buddhist tradition, but in some of the Hindu traditions. It's to be totally engaged, mind, body, and soul in something, so that you've lost yourself. You've forgotten yourself. And that's doing nothing. So it's almost counterintuitive, right? It's like, to do nothing, you have to do something, but do it so completely that there's nothing left, right? And so the thing we do in Zazen is you sit, and you're doing that simplest activity you can do as completely, with as much sincerity, focus, and attention as possible. And this doesn't have to be like, Rinzai is my tradition, it's a samurai tradition, but it doesn't have to be like, there's all these statements always in the classic texts about practice like your hair is on fire, or you have to kill the I am self, kill the self, It can also be very gentle, like today. It was a sinking in, a sinking in, and a sinking in until this in the sitting until this effort to be an example of practice or to be somehow a positive monk that dissolved, it died. It was nothing, it disappeared. And then this melancholy arose, this new self arose. So I was taught that, if you look at the word Zen, which we all know comes from Chan, which is a Chinese word for this Sanskrit word called dhyana, which I was taught means single pointed concentration, like concentration to one point. And I guess that's what the word Zen means in my tradition. You are concentrating or giving yourself so fully, bringing yourself down to one point with such complete focus that self in that moment dies, right? And that's how you do nothing. It does itself. So I've found this to be helpful because I don't know how to sort of let go or surrender. I'm learning and it's become very helpful. And largely it's because I just keep failing to sit well. And so then I just stop trying and truly surrender. And then I'm able to let go of a lot of my ambitions and delusions and sort of anxieties when I do my practice. But part of that surrendering for me has been really knowing that when I sit on the cushion, I have a job to do, and it's to focus. And again, it's a combination between like effort and letting go somehow, right? Between and my mentor used to say that effort, another word for effort is like sincerity. So you sit with as much sincerity as possible. Now I don't mean to give you something new to do on the cushion, like, okay, I gotta die into this sit, I gotta do the sitting completely. But if you find that your mind is wandering a little bit, if you find that you're struggling on the cushion, you don't really know how to get through the 25-minute sits without driving yourself crazy. You can just remember, okay, I'm doing an activity. I'm sitting and breathing. So with sincerity and focus and generosity, give myself to the posture. Feel what's happening. Give myself to it. Teacher would say you have to die on the cushion, right? Okay, I hope that's a little bit helpful for you. Why I think this is valuable is not just because it's helpful on the cushion, but because, okay, all day long, I find that I have thoughts running through my head. As those neurologists told me, I'm fast forwarding into the future or rewinding into the past a lot. One of the things these neurologists said is that, I don't know where she got this from, but 50% of the day, the human brain is spent doing this projecting into the future or rewinding into the past when we're not in the present moment. One of the things that I found is helpful throughout my day is, now it's time to give myself to the activity that I'm doing when I'm too lost in my head. And we're always doing something. We can be talking to somebody at work, right? And then you realize you're lost in your head. Okay, time to give myself to the physical presence of this person, right? Or it can be driving your car, going to the bathroom. We can practice again and again and again, over and over and over throughout the day, and have these moments of waking up throughout the day. Like we wake up, Buddha manifests, awareness manifests. I realize I'm stuck in my head, and I give myself to the activity that I'm doing in that moment, the way I was taught to do on the cushion, whether sitting at your desk, whatever the physical activity is. It's good to it's good. It's physical. It's always physical. It's always physical. That's how you get out of your head, right? So you put your mind into the physicality of the moment. Give yourself to it completely. I find that my thinking mind, dies in that moment, and then a fresh new self in a new moment, and a new world arises. It's weird how that happens. Sometimes I'll be caught in my head, and I'm on my walk, and then it just takes a few steps, and I've done it completely like it was walking meditation. And then I'll notice 10 minutes later, I'm released from whatever suffering thought I was having 11 minutes before. Okay, friends, thank you for your practice. I did a video recently about Sangha, or a spiritual community, which I'll post on YouTube probably next week or the week after. And I'm happy to have you as my Sangha and to be sitting with you. And I look forward to doing this again. I gave you my email here, showsonjackhobner@gmail.com. Please send me your questions. Please send me your questions. And I look forward to sitting with them and maybe doing a video on them. Okay, friends. Until next time, ciao.